3 weeks ago, I was planning my 10th wedding anniversary. Today, I'm testifying in a federal courtroom against the man I loved. And it all started with a phone call that should have been impossible. Hello, beautiful souls. Welcome to a story that will challenge everything you know about identity, trust, and betrayal. This is a tale of how one woman's ordinary life unraveled in the most extraordinary way possible when reality itself seemed to split in two. Before we dive in, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Drop your location in the comments below. And how are you doing? I hope you're somewhere comfortable because you'll want to stay for this entire journey. Oh, and have you subscribed to my channel yet? If not, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss the stories I have coming for you. Olivia Morrison folded the last of her husband's dress shirts, smoothing the collar with practiced precision. Tuesday mornings were always laundry days, a simple routine in her otherwise chaotic schedule. The anniversary dinner reservations were confirmed for Friday. She'd managed to book Jack's favorite steakhouse after weeks of persistence. 10 years together deserved something special. The house was quiet except for the soft jazz playing from the kitchen speaker. Jack had left for work at his usual time, kissing her goodbye with the same tenderness he'd shown for a decade. "Love you, gorgeous," he'd said, his hand lingering on her waist a moment longer than usual. When her phone rang, Olivia assumed it was the florist confirming the centerpiece order. The screen showed an unfamiliar number, but she answered anyway. "Mrs. Morrison?" The voice was tense, professional, but with an unmistakable edge of panic. "Yes, speaking. This is Samuel Winters, branch manager at First National Bank on Maple Street. I'm sorry to bother you, but we have a situation." He paused, his breath audible through the phone. "You're here at the bank right now, trying to transfer a significant amount of money." Olivia laughed. "No, I'm not. I'm at home folding laundry. That's why I'm calling. You're here, but you're also at home." The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mrs. Morrison, someone who looks exactly like you, with all your identification, is sitting in my office right now." The laundry basket slipped from Olivia's hands, scattering freshly folded shirts across the hardwood floor. "That's impossible," she whispered, but even as she said it, her mind raced through possibilities. Identity theft was common, but someone physically impersonating her? Security has been alerted, but I needed to confirm. This woman has answered all our security questions correctly. She has your ID, your credit cards, even your mother's maiden name and childhood address. Olivia's hand trembled as she grabbed her car keys. "I'm coming right now. Don't let her leave. We're stalling her, but Mrs. Morrison," his voice dropped even lower. "She's with your husband." The 12-minute drive to the bank stretched into an eternity. Olivia's hands shook so violently she could barely grip the steering wheel. She ran 2 red lights, narrowly missed a delivery truck, and parked crooked across 2 spaces in the bank's lot. The scene outside was chaos. 2 police cruisers with flashing lights, security guards positioned at the entrance, and curious onlookers gathering on the sidewalk. A young officer tried to stop her at the door, but she pushed past him. "I'm Olivia Morrison," she said, voice surprisingly steady despite the hurricane in her chest. "Your manager called me." The lobby fell silent as she walked in. The teller stared. A security guard spoke urgently into his radio. And then Samuel Winters emerged from his office, face pale as paper. He looked at Olivia, then back toward his office door, then at Olivia again. "Mrs. Morrison," he said, approaching slowly as if she might bite. "Thank you for coming so quickly." "Where is she?" Olivia demanded. "Where is this person pretending to be me?" The manager gestured toward a conference room with frosted glass walls. Through the translucent barrier, Olivia could make out 2 figures. One was unmistakably Jack. Her husband's broad shoulders and the familiar tilt of his head were visible even through the obscured glass. And beside him sat a woman with the same honey-brown hair that fell just past her shoulders, the same slender frame that Olivia saw in the mirror every morning. With her heart threatening to burst from her chest, Olivia pushed open that conference room door. And when she turned around, when their eyes met, I understood why the police had been called. This wasn't just someone who looked like me. She was me. down to the scar on my left eyebrow from when I was 6. How is that even possible? But what I didn't know yet, what no one in that room knew, was that she'd been living a second version of my life for 8 months. And I was about to find out exactly how deep this went. The physical resemblance was uncanny, impossibly, frighteningly perfect. The woman sitting beside Jack wasn't just similar to Olivia. She was identical. Same height, same hair, same slightly asymmetrical smile. Even more disturbing, she was wearing a navy blue blazer with gold buttons and cream slacks, the exact outfit Olivia had posted on Instagram 3 days ago. For several seconds, no one spoke. The room crackled with tension as both women stared at each other in mutual shock. Jack had risen from his chair, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and something darker that Olivia couldn't immediately identify. What the hell is going on? Jack finally broke the silence, looking between the two women. Who are you? He demanded, pointing at Olivia standing in the doorway. Who am I? Olivia's voice rose in disbelief. I'm your wife, Jack.
I'm Olivia.
The other woman stood slowly, maintaining perfect composure despite the chaos unfolding. This is absurd. I don't know who this woman is, or why she's pretending to be me, but I'm Olivia Morrison. Her voice was eerily identical to Olivia's, the same pitch, the same subtle rasp when she spoke loudly. It was then that Olivia noticed the ring. As the woman gesticulated, light caught on the antique emerald-cut diamond set in platinum, her grandmother's ring that had been passed down through 3 generations. The ring Olivia had tearfully reported missing 2 months ago after an exhaustive search of their home. My ring, Olivia whispered, then louder. That's my grandmother's ring. The one I thought I'd lost 2 months ago. She stepped forward, pointing. But I didn't lose it. You took it. The bank manager, who had been hovering anxiously at the door, cleared his throat. Perhaps we should call the police. They're already on their way, said a security guard from behind. The doppelganger maintained her composure, turning to Jack with a perfectly executed look of concern. Honey, I think this poor woman needs help. She's clearly confused. But Olivia wasn't listening anymore. Her attention had shifted to the documents spread across the conference table. Banking forms, transfer authorizations, signatures that matched her own with unsettling precision. She snatched up one of the papers, scanning the content with growing horror. $20 million? You were trying to transfer $20 million to... She squinted at the routing numbers. An account in the Cayman Islands? She looked up at Jack. That's almost everything we have. Jack remained silent, but something had changed in his expression. The confusion was gone, replaced by calculation. His eyes darted between Olivia and the security cameras in the corners of the room. A bank officer stepped forward nervously. Mrs. Morrison, the Mrs. Morrison who's been our client for years. Perhaps you could verify some information for us? Before either woman could respond, a detective entered the room. He was tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that seemed to miss nothing. I think we need to sort this out at the station. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, both Mrs. Morrisons, I'd like you all to come with me. The doppelganger finally showed her first sign of discomfort, a slight tightening around her eyes. This is ridiculous. I have rights. You can't just... Actually, ma'am, when you're attempting to transfer $20 million with what appears to be fraudulent authorization, we absolutely can. As they were escorted out, Olivia caught her husband's expression. It wasn't guilt she saw there. It wasn't even shame. It was fury, raw, unfiltered rage directed at her. For ruining what appeared to be their plan. At the police station, they were separated into different rooms. Olivia sat alone for nearly an hour before the same detective entered, carrying a thick file folder under his arm. He introduced himself as Detective Thomas Reynolds and placed the folder on the table between them. Mrs. Morrison, he began. The real Mrs. Morrison, I believe? When Olivia nodded, he continued. Do you have any idea what's happening here? Someone's stealing my identity. My money. My life. Her voice cracked on the last word. It's a bit more complicated than that. The detective opened the file, and Olivia saw her entire life laid out in photographs. Her at the grocery store, carefully selecting peaches. Her at yoga class, rolling up her mat after savasana. Her getting coffee every morning, same time, same order. Mrs. Morrison, how long have you felt like you were being watched? I hadn't. Her throat constricted. That was the problem. I hadn't noticed anything. But then he showed her the next photo, and her blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her at her father's house, taken through the window of his study. The house with the advanced security system. The one that should be impossible to photograph without triggering alarms. Someone had been inside, and they'd been there recently. Her real name is Melissa Chen, Detective Reynolds said, sliding a professional headshot across the table. 34 years old. Former theater actress turned professional impersonator. She started in corporate espionage, pretending to be executives to gain access to trade secrets. Then she discovered identity theft was more lucrative. Olivia stared at the photograph. Without the makeup and styling to match Olivia's appearance, Melissa Chen looked nothing like her. Sharper features, darker complexion, completely different bone structure. The transformation was incredible. Terrifying. We raided her apartment this morning. The detective continued, spreading more photographs in front of Olivia. The images showed a shrine to identity theft. An entire wall covered with photos of Olivia from every angle. Wigs carefully styled to match Olivia's hair. Some of them, the detective explained, actually made from Olivia's own hair, collected from her regular salon. Voice recordings labeled by emotional state: angry, tired, happy, professional. Silicone fingerprint molds. Practice sheets with hundreds of repetitions of Olivia's signature. How did she get my fingerprints? Olivia asked, feeling violated in ways she couldn't articulate. Drinking glasses from restaurants. Door handles. Your gym membership uses fingerprint access. The detective's matter-of-fact tone somehow made it worse. Ms. Chun is meticulous. And my husband? Jack. What does he have to do with this? The detective's expression darkened. We'll get to him. First, you should know, you're not her first victim. He produced another set of photographs, 6 women, all with different appearances, different lives. But they shared one thing in common: wealth. Melissa Chun has successfully impersonated at least 6 other women in the past 3 years. 5 of those impersonations resulted in successful thefts totaling approximately $84 million. Olivia's hands trembled. And the sixth victim died under suspicious circumstances before the theft could be completed. He let that sink in before continuing. There's a pattern here, Mrs. Morrison. All of the victims were Black women with generational wealth. All had trusting husbands who introduced financial advisors into their lives. Olivia thought of Mitchell Hannigan, the investment advisor Jack had brought into their lives 8 months ago. The man who had suggested consolidating their assets for better portfolio management. We believe Melissa and her associates target specific women. They study them for months before making their move. They learn everything: habits, mannerisms, personal histories, security questions. The detective reached into the file and pulled out a leather-bound journal. Melissa kept detailed notes on each victim. This one is about you. He opened it to reveal page after page of meticulous observations written in neat, precise handwriting. Subject touches her necklace when nervous. Subject orders oat milk latte, 1 sugar, every morning at 7:15 a.m. Subject trusts husband completely. Exploitable weakness. Olivia felt sick. Her entire existence had been reduced to a series of behavioral patterns to be mimicked, exploited, and ultimately erased. Then the detective turned to the last entry, dated just 3 days before the bank incident. Olivia read it aloud, her voice barely a whisper. Backup timeline initiated. Life insurance policy confirmed. Target elimination, 21 days. The room seemed to spin around her. Target elimination? They were planning to kill you, yes. Detective Reynolds' voice was gentle but unflinching. If the bank transfer had succeeded, you would have been reported missing within the week. A tragic accident would have been staged. Your body would never have been found. Olivia wasn't just being robbed. She was being replaced. And if the bank robbery failed, she had 3 weeks to live. But here's what they didn't know about her family. Your husband, Jack Morrison, isn't who you think he is, Detective Reynolds said, pulling another folder from his stack. His real name is Peter Thatcher. He's what we call a recruiter in these operations. His job is to identify wealthy women, marry them, and set the stage for their financial destruction. He laid out a series of photographs, different names, different appearances, but the same man. Jack. Or rather, Peter. In the past 6 years, he's married 4 wealthy women. 3 are dead. Accidents, supposedly. The 4th lost everything but survived. She's currently living under witness protection. Olivia stared at the wedding photos, Jack beaming next to various brides, all successful women with similar backgrounds to her own. Her stomach churned with acid as the reality of her decade-long marriage disintegrated before her eyes. The marriage was a lie from the beginning, she whispered. Yes, Reynolds confirmed. But it's bigger than just Jack or Peter. Much bigger. He spread 47 photographs across the table in neat rows. Olivia recognized many of the faces. Their wedding photographer, her yoga instructor, her hairstylist, their financial advisor, even her favorite barista. Every one of these people was placed in your life deliberately. They've been watching you, reporting back, helping to construct the perfect conditions for your replacement and elimination. Olivia picked up the photo of Maya, her yoga instructor of 3 years. The woman she'd shared green smoothies with after class, who had listened to her marital frustrations and offered comforting advice. Maya, too. Her real name is Sonia Diaz. Former con artist, recruited 5 years ago. The scope of the betrayal was overwhelming. Olivia's entire social circle, the fabric of her daily life, had been infiltrated and manipulated. People she trusted, laughed with, confided in, all participants in plotting her death. Who runs this? Who's behind it all? She asked, her shock giving way to anger. Reynolds produced one more photograph, an elegant older man with silver hair and refined features, dressed in an expensive suit. This is the mastermind. He goes by Richard Blackwell, though that's not his real name. He's been operating under false identities for at least 12 years. Former corporate lawyer who discovered that stealing generational wealth was more profitable than protecting it. I've never seen him before. You weren't meant to. He stays in the background, orchestrates everything. The system is elegant in its simplicity. Target, recruit, surround, study, replace, eliminate, profit. Reynolds pulled out a map marked with red pins. They're operating in 7 states. We've identified 23 confirmed victims, though we suspect there are more. The total stolen exceeds $300 million. It's one of the most sophisticated identity theft and murder operations we've ever encountered. Olivia struggled to process the magnitude of what she was hearing. Her marriage, her friends, her daily routine, all an elaborate stage set designed for her eventual destruction. How did you catch them? She asked. If they're so good at this, how did I survive when the others didn't? The FBI agent who had been silently observing from the corner finally spoke. That's the most interesting part of your case, Mrs. Morrison. He stepped forward, introducing himself as Special Agent Carter. You're the first one who survived long enough to see the attempt. The others either died before we could intervene, or the theft was so clean they never knew it happened. He leaned across the table, his expression serious. You should be dead right now. The only reason you're not is... He paused, choosing his words carefully. Someone has been protecting you. Someone who knew about this network before we did. Olivia knew exactly who he meant. Her father. The man who built his fortune on security systems and paranoia. The man who never fully trusted her husband. What had he known? And more importantly, what had he been planning? The conference room door opened, and Olivia looked up to see her father striding in. Victor Morrison moved with the purposeful confidence of a man who had built an empire from nothing. His security company protected half the corporate headquarters in the city, and his reputation for paranoia was legendary in business circles. Today, that paranoia looked more like foresight. Unlike Olivia, who appeared shell-shocked and exhausted, Victor seemed prepared for this moment. He carried his own leather portfolio, nodding curtly to the FBI agents as he took a seat beside his daughter. I've been expecting her call, he said to Detective Reynolds, sliding his portfolio across the table. Everything you need is in here. Financial records, surveillance logs, digital communications. 3 years' worth. Olivia stared at her father. 3 years? What are you talking about? Victor turned to her, his expression softening slightly. I've had a private investigator on your husband for 3 years. Since 2 weeks after you met him. The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. You were spying on Jack? For our entire relationship. On Peter, Victor corrected firmly. Jack Morrison doesn't exist. Never did. Agent Carter opened Victor's portfolio and began examining the contents, his eyebrows rising progressively higher. This is comprehensive. I protect what's mine, Victor stated simply. When Olivia brought home a man who supposedly ran a successful investment firm but had no digital footprint older than 5 years, I became concerned. So you've been watching us? Olivia's voice shook with a mixture of betrayal and gratitude. In our home? Victor nodded without apology. Hidden cameras disguised as smoke detectors. Audio recording on all phone calls. Tracking devices in his car. My God, Dad. Olivia didn't know whether to hug him or slap him. 6 months ago, one of my investigators made the connection to another case, a woman in Seattle who'd lost everything to a similar scheme. The husband in that case looked very different, but the digital forensics matched. Same programmer, same methods, same offshore accounts. And you didn't tell me? Olivia's voice broke. You knew my husband was planning to kill me, and you said nothing? Victor reached for her hand, but she pulled away. I couldn't tell you, baby girl. If you'd acted differently, they would have known. You had to believe the lie so they would too. Detective Reynolds leaned forward. You've been building a case. Working with the FBI for months, Victor confirmed. We needed them to make their move. Catching them in the act of identity theft and attempted wire fraud gives us leverage to flip the smaller players and get to Blackwell. You used me as bait, Olivia whispered. I protected you, Victor countered. Every step of the way. Why do you think the bank manager called you immediately? Why do you think the police were already there? Nothing was left to chance. Before Olivia could respond, Victor pulled out a laptop and placed it on the table. You need to see this. It's from 4 months ago. He pressed play, and the screen displayed Olivia's living room. Jack, Peter, paced back and forth, phone pressed to his ear. He spoke in a language Olivia didn't recognize, something Eastern European. Then subtitles appeared at the bottom of the screen. The wife suspects nothing. The father is the only problem. Once she's gone, he won't be able to prove anything. Family tragedy. Inheritance consolidates. Standard protocol. Victor paused the video and looked at his daughter. They were planning to kill me too. Olivia stared at the frozen image of the man she'd loved for 10 years, the man she'd shared a bed with, planned a future with. A stranger who had been plotting her death in their living room. But my father hadn't just been gathering evidence, she murmured, the pieces finally clicking into place. He'd been setting a trap. And the night of the bank incident? That wasn't an accident. That was the spring being released. We'd been watching their communications for months, Victor explained, his voice taking on the methodical tone he used when discussing business strategy. We knew they were planning to move the money this week. I anonymously tipped off bank security that morning. Agent Carter nodded. Your father has been an invaluable resource, Mrs. Morrison. We've been coordinating with him for 3 months, preparing for this moment. Reynolds pulled up a digital map on his tablet. The FBI had surveillance teams in place across 3 states. Every person in the network was being watched. Every phone call recorded. Every financial transaction traced. It had to be simultaneous, Victor added. If we moved on just one part of the network, the others would scatter. Blackwell has contingency plans for his contingency plans. Olivia was still processing the enormity of the operation and her unwitting role in it. So, while I was planning our anniversary dinner, you were planning a multi-state FBI raid? When they arrested your husband, Agent Carter continued, they arrested 13 other people within the same hour. Different cities, different roles, all connected. Images appeared on a screen at the front of the room, surveillance photos of arrests in progress. Olivia recognized several faces, her yoga instructor being led from the studio in handcuffs, her hairstylist taken from behind the salon counter, the financial advisor, Mitchell Hannigan, being arrested in what appeared to be an airport terminal. Mitchell was trying to flee the country, Reynolds explained. He knew the operation had been compromised the moment the bank called you. For the first time, Victor's composed facade cracked. He reached for Olivia's hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. "I'm sorry for the deception," he said, his voice rougher than she'd ever heard it. "I knew what it would do to you. But I couldn't see any other way to protect you and build a case strong enough to take down the entire network." Tears glistened in his eyes, something Olivia hadn't seen since her mother's funeral 15 years ago. "If anything had happened to you, because I wasn't thorough enough." He didn't finish the thought. Olivia squeezed his hand. The anger wasn't gone, but understanding was beginning to take its place. Her father had done what he always did, protect what he valued most, using every resource at his disposal. Agent Carter cleared his throat. "There's one more thing you should know. This morning, at approximately 9:45 a.m., Richard Blackwell was arrested by our team." He slid a photograph across the table. It showed the silver-haired man in handcuffs, being escorted into a black SUV by agents in FBI windbreakers. Olivia studied the image, then noticed something in the background, a familiar building. "That's your office building," she said to her father. The FBI agent spread out photographs of all 14 arrests. Handcuffs. Shocked faces. Police cars. But that one photograph made Olivia's heart stop. It was Richard Blackwell, the mastermind, being arrested outside her father's office building. "Mr. Morrison," Agent Carter said, leaning forward, "can you explain why the head of this criminal network was coming to meet with you the morning of the arrests?" The room went silent. Everyone looked at her father. And he smiled. "Because I invited him," Victor said calmly. "I've been playing a long game. For the past 6 months, I've been posing as a potential investor in Blackwell's private equity fund. He believes I'm a wealthy security expert looking to diversify my holdings." Olivia stared at her father in disbelief. "You infiltrated their network." "I needed to understand how deep this went, how many victims there were, how many accomplices." Victor's eyes hardened. "And I needed to get close enough to Blackwell to ensure he couldn't escape when everything fell apart." "You've been gathering evidence from the inside," Reynolds said, impressed despite himself. Victor nodded. "Recordings of every meeting, documentation of their methods, names of other victims we didn't know about yet." "That was incredibly dangerous," Olivia whispered. "Worth the risk." Victor turned to face her fully. "Richard Blackwell never saw it coming. None of them did. And now they'll all pay for what they've done. To you, and to everyone else they've hurt." My father had done more than gather evidence. He'd infiltrated their network. He'd been playing the role of potential investor for 6 months, getting close to the mastermind, learning their entire operation from the inside. And Richard Blackwell never saw it coming. The morning of the arrests had begun like any other day. Jack had kissed Olivia goodbye at 7:30 a.m., lingering a moment longer than usual, his eyes searching her face. "I love you," he'd said, the lie rolling off his tongue with practiced ease. "Love you too," she'd responded automatically, completely unaware that it would be the last normal moment of her marriage. At precisely 6 a.m., before most of the city was awake, the FBI had launched synchronized raids across 14 locations in 3 states. SWAT teams in tactical gear breached apartments, offices, and storage facilities. Helicopters hovered over 2 properties where resistance was expected. Agent Carter narrated the operation as footage played on the screen, captured from body cameras and surveillance drones. "We moved simultaneously to prevent anyone from warning the others. Each target had specific teams assigned based on their threat level and importance to the case." Olivia watched, mesmerized, as the elaborately choreographed takedown unfolded. In a sleek downtown apartment, Melissa Chun was arrested while applying makeup. Olivia's makeup, purchased from the same stores Olivia frequented. In a suburban house, the wedding photographer who had documented Olivia's marriage was led away in handcuffs, protesting loudly about his innocence. The evidence seized is substantial, Reynolds reported. Approximately $47 million in accounts we've already frozen. Forged documents for 31 victims, most of whom had no idea they'd been targeted. And most disturbing, kill orders for 8 people, including you, Mrs. Morrison. Kill orders. The clinical term couldn't disguise the horror of what it meant. 8 people marked for death to facilitate theft. Melissa Chin has been particularly cooperative, Agent Carter noted. In exchange for immunity from the most serious charges, she's providing details about the entire operation, including 2 more networks operating in different regions. 2 more networks. Olivia repeated, stunned. Blackwell isn't the only one running these operations. There are others using similar methods, sometimes competing, sometimes collaborating. Outside the federal building, media trucks had already begun to gather. The story was too sensational to ignore. A nationwide identity theft ring, high society victims, murder plots, and a dramatic confrontation at a bank between 2 identical women. The U.S. Attorney's Office is preparing for a federal prosecution, Reynolds explained. Given the interstate nature of the crimes, the case will be handled at the federal level. The charges include wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit murder, and RICO violations. RICO? Olivia asked. Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, Victor explained. It's used for organized crime. Carries heavier penalties. A video feed from outside showed reporters doing stand-ups in front of the federal building, their headlines scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Identity theft ring exposed, and heiress targeted in elaborate murder plot. This will be a media circus, Olivia said quietly. Unfortunately, yes, Agent Carter confirmed. A case like this, with the social elements, the wealth aspect, the murder plots, it's going to attract significant attention. A young assistant district attorney entered the room, carrying yet another folder. She introduced herself as Julia Martinez, then turned to Olivia with a serious expression. Mrs. Morrison, I want to prepare you for what's coming. The arrests are just the beginning. The trial is 6 months away, and I need to warn you. Your husband's defense will be that you knew everything, that you set him up, that this was a domestic dispute gone wrong. She laid out a series of documents, preliminary legal strategies, witness lists, evidence summaries. They're going to put you on trial. Your character, your motives, your relationship. They'll try to create reasonable doubt by painting you as a vengeful wife. The prosecutor leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. I need to ask you something important, and I need you to think carefully before answering. Are you prepared to testify against your husband in front of a jury, knowing he'll be sitting 15 feet away from you? Olivia had 6 months to prepare. 6 months to relive every moment of her marriage and question what was real. 6 months to decide if she was strong enough to face him. The trial would either set her free or destroy her completely. The federal courthouse steps were a gauntlet of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. Olivia kept her eyes forward, clutching her father's arm as they navigated the chaos. 6 months had passed since the arrests, 6 months of depositions, evidence reviews, and psychological counseling to prepare her for this day. Inside the courtroom, polished wood and hushed voices created an atmosphere of somber formality. The gallery was packed, journalists, legal observers, and curious citizens drawn by the sensational headlines that had dominated news cycles for months. Olivia took her seat at the prosecution table beside U.S. Attorney Julia Martinez. Across the aisle, Jack, Peter Thatcher, sat with his defense team, dressed impeccably in a tailored navy suit that Olivia herself had purchased for him just last year. Their eyes met briefly before she deliberately looked away, focusing instead on the American flag behind the judge's bench. Judge Eleanor Wilkins entered, and the court rose. After preliminary instructions, Martinez approached the podium for her opening statement. This case is about betrayal in its most calculated form, she began, her voice clear and measured. The evidence will show that the defendant, Peter Thatcher, systematically targeted wealthy women, married them under false pretenses, and conspired to steal their assets and take their lives. Mrs. Olivia Morrison was to be his 4th victim. The defense attorney, Gerald Hayes, was known for his aggressive tactics and theatrical courtroom style. His opening statement painted an entirely different picture. "This case isn't about some elaborate criminal conspiracy," Hayes declared, gesturing dramatically. "It's about a marriage gone wrong. A wealthy wife who discovered her husband's affair and manufactured this entire conspiracy as revenge." The prosecution's case rests on the testimony of admitted criminals who've been offered deals to say whatever the government wants. And it hinges on the word of a woman who couldn't face the simple truth that her marriage was failing. Olivia felt her face grow hot as Hayes continued, twisting facts into a narrative that made her the villain, a privileged, paranoid woman working with her controlling father to punish a husband who had strayed. For 3 weeks, the trial unfolded like a complex psychological thriller. The prosecution methodically presented their evidence, financial records showing the systematic theft from previous victims, surveillance footage of network members meeting to coordinate their activities, Melissa Chen's detailed testimony about how she studied Olivia for months before attempting to replace her. Throughout it all, Peter Thatcher sat impassive, occasionally leaning to whisper to his attorneys but showing no reaction to the damning evidence. Then came the day Olivia dreaded most, her testimony. As she was sworn in, she forced herself to look directly at the man she had loved, searching for any trace of the person she thought she knew. "Mrs. Morrison," Martinez began gently, "how long were you married to the defendant?" 10 years, Olivia answered, her voice stronger than she expected. "Though I've recently learned that our marriage license was falsified, so legally, we were never actually married." The questioning continued, walking her through the relationship, the bank incident, the discovery of the plot against her. When Martinez asked how she felt upon learning the truth, Olivia paused. "Imagine discovering that your entire life for a decade was a performance," she said finally. "Every anniversary celebration, every birthday, every time he held me when I cried or laughed at my jokes or told me he loved me. All of it calculated to gain my trust, so he could take everything from me, including my life." When it was Hayes's turn to cross-examine, he approached with exaggerated sympathy. "Mrs. Morrison, isn't it true that your father never approved of your marriage?" "My father had concerns," Olivia acknowledged. "Concerns that led him to spy on you in your own home? To record your private conversations? To track your movements? He was protecting me. Or controlling you?" Hayes suggested, "creating doubt about a husband he never wanted you to have." For 2 hours, Hayes attempted to undermine her credibility, suggesting that she had been influenced by her father's paranoia, that she had misinterpreted innocent financial transactions, that the entire case was built on speculation and circumstantial evidence. As the cross-examination neared its end, Hayes asked what he clearly thought was his knockout question. "Mrs. Morrison, isn't it possible that your husband was simply planning a surprise for your anniversary? That these financial movements were investments he hoped would secure your future together?" Olivia leaned forward, looking directly at Peter. "You want to know what hurts most? Not the money. Not the murder plot. It's that you made me doubt myself. You made me feel crazy. And you almost won." Her voice grew stronger. "But here's what I know now. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And you showed me exactly who you are the moment you stood in that bank beside a woman wearing my face, ready to steal my life." The courtroom fell silent. Even Hayes seemed momentarily at a loss for words. The next day, the prosecution presented their final evidence: video recordings of Peter discussing the murder plot in their living room, audio transcripts of his conversations with Richard Blackwell, financial documents showing transfers to hitmen in previous cases, and Melissa Chen's complete testimony about how she was recruited and trained to become Olivia. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they filed back in, Olivia couldn't breathe. The foreman stood. "On the count of conspiracy to commit murder in the first degree, how do you find?" The foreman looked directly at Peter Thatcher and said,
"Guilty."
And then he said it 13 more times.
"Guilty, guilty, guilty."
One for every charge. The judge asked if Peter had anything to say before sentencing. And what he said in that moment, Olivia would never forget it as long as she lived. Judge Wilkins's sentence was unequivocal: 25 years with no possibility of parole. Peter Thatcher would remain in federal prison until he was nearly 70 years old. The other members of the network received sentences ranging from 8 to 18 years, depending on their level of involvement and cooperation with prosecutors. Before being led away, Peter asked to address Olivia directly. The judge allowed it, warning him to keep his comments brief and appropriate. He turned to face Olivia, his expression softening to something that, in another lifetime, she might have believed was genuine emotion. "I know you won't believe this," he said quietly, "but I loved you. That part was real." Olivia stared back, searching his face for truth or manipulation and finding she no longer cared which it was. Both possibilities led to the same place, forward, without him. As she walked out of the courthouse under the bright spring sky, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. With her father's arm around her shoulders, Olivia moved through the chaos with her head held high, finally free of the weight she'd carried for 10 years. 6 months after the trial, Olivia established the Morrison Legacy Foundation, dedicated to protecting generational wealth in vulnerable communities and educating women about financial independence. Using her experience and her resources, she created a network of financial advisors, security experts, and legal counselors specifically trained to recognize and prevent identity theft and exploitation. "We've identified and stopped 23 similar schemes in just our first year," Olivia told a journalist during a profile interview for Financial Protection Monthly. The foundation has helped preserve over $400 million in assets and provided support to 47 families who are targeted by identity thieves and con artists. The work gave purpose to her pain. Each family protected, each scheme uncovered, helped transform her trauma into something meaningful. Through intensive therapy, Olivia had begun to process the complex emotions surrounding her marriage. The betrayal still hurt, but it no longer defined her. Her relationship with her father had transformed as well. The secrets between them had given way to a new transparency. Victor had stepped back from day-to-day operations at his security firm to serve as the foundation's chief security advisor, channeling his protective instincts into helping others. On the anniversary of the bank incident, Olivia hosted a private gathering for survivors, women who had experienced similar betrayals and those who had been protected by the foundation's interventions. Standing before them, she shared the lessons that had become her mantra. Trust your instincts. Verify everything. Protect your legacy. And never let anyone make you feel crazy for being careful. The women nodded in recognition, their faces reflecting back the strength Olivia had fought hard to reclaim. This was her true legacy, not just the wealth her father had built, but the wisdom she had earned through fire. As the event concluded, Olivia's assistant approached with a concerned expression. "There's a call for you. They say it's urgent." In her office, Olivia picked up the phone, expecting a donor or perhaps a journalist seeking comment on the foundation's recent expansion. Instead, she heard a familiar voice, Agent Carter from the FBI, his tone serious and measured. "Mrs. Morrison, I need to talk to you. We've found another network, and they know who you are." Olivia's hand tightened on the receiver as Carter continued. "Richard Blackwell had partners we didn't identify in the initial investigation. They've been watching the foundation. They know what you're doing, how many operations you've disrupted." She looked out her office window at the city skyline, feeling not fear but a strange sense of readiness. This fight wasn't over. Not by a long shot. But neither was she the same woman who had walked into a bank 1 year ago and seen her own face staring back at her. This time, she wasn't unprepared. This time, she wasn't alone. This time, she was ready. If you enjoyed this story and want to know what happens next when Olivia faces this new threat, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Your support means everything, and I promise the next chapter will be even more intense. Leave a comment below with your thoughts. Would you have the courage to face your betrayers like Olivia did? And don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear this message of resilience and strength. Sometimes the person who walked away simply made space for the life you deserved all along.